Councillor Hookway, I've just gone through all the protocols for the meeting. Are you comfortable with all those? Do I need to repeat them for you?
Yeah, sorry, I missed them. So I don't know if you want to do that again for me, please.
Okay. So it's just to remind you to turn your mobile off or to silent, set your microphone to mute during the meeting. If you are wanting to speak, please click your icon and wait to be called, remembering to unmute your microphone. When we come to voting, we'll do that in line with the procedure in the Constitution. I'll ask about a recorded vote first. If we reach the appropriate number, we'll take the recorded vote. Otherwise, the voting will be done by a click of hands, as I instruct you. And remember that we are going to be, I think, just been streamed on the YouTube channel. So please be aware of that. So I think we're actually ready to start. Okay. Right. Good evening, members, and welcome to the Development Committee, 22nd of April 2021. As we're informed, this is the last formal council meeting of the municipal year. And welcome to anyone that is watching us on the council's YouTube streaming. Apologies for absence. Apologies have been received so far from Councillor Mr. Shaw, Councillor Mrs. Shaw, Councillor Weston, and Councillor Iano. In terms of substitutes for substitute members, we've got Councillor Gooding for Councillor Mr. Shaw, Councillor Belton for Councillor Mrs. Shaw, Councillor Steptoe for Councillor Mrs. Weston, and I believe that is it. And then we have non-members attending, Councillor Sperring. I think I've covered everyone. Item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of March 2021. Will you be happy in due course for those to be accepted as a true and accurate record of that meeting? Please indicate by the clicked hand, by the raised icon, if you've got any issues. If you've got any issues, I'll assume acceptance unless you click. So, Councillor Merrick, I'm still seeing your hand's gone down. Okay, we'll accept those minutes then. Right, item 5, declarations of interest. I've got an item to read out here in connection with item 6 on the committee on the agenda. I should just make it clear, in case anyone is still looking at an old copy of the agenda, the original item 6, Cherry Orchard Brickworks, that item has been deferred and will come back to the committee in due course. So with regards to the land to the west of the car park, Cherry Orchard Jubilee Country Park, that's application 20/01128-out. This application is made on the council's land by a third party. This is legally acceptable in planning terms. However, if granted, the council will benefit from the application. There would be an other pecuniary interest for members of the committee to declare. With that in mind, we still need to consider the business before us, as we are the local planning authority. Accordingly, pursuant to section 33 of the Localism Act 2011 and the authority delegated to the monitoring officer by the council under minute 86-12, she has granted a dispensation to all members of the Development Committee and their substitutes for the application 20/01128/out on the basis that without the dispensation, the number of persons prohibited by section 31(4) from participating in any particular business would be so great a proportion of the body transacting the business as to impede the transaction of the business. This dispensation is for a period of 1 year. I'll also mention that you're respectfully reminded that as members of the Development Committee, you are aware that when making a decision on a planning application, you must take a proactive role and take account only into planning material planning considerations. Also on that particular application, a number of members may well be an acquaintance of the planning agent, and if so, you should declare a non-pecuniary interest. So with that in mind, it's taken as read that we have now all got a dispensation as members for the Cherry Orchard. Can I ask for declarations to be made? I'll just start with myself in that I have a non-pecuniary interest by virtue of my acquaintance with the planning agent for the Cherry Orchard application. Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I have an interest as ward councillor and county councillor for the same area. A non-pecuniary interest, as you've already stated, with regards to the agent, is known to me, and also the applicant themselves.
All being non-pecuniary interests.
Correct.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. Likewise, I have a non-pecuniary interest in, by virtue of the fact that I am a ward member, parish council chairman of that area, and the applicant and the applicant's agent is known to me, and so that's a non-pecuniary. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gooding.
For me, Chairman, it's a non-pecuniary interest in the knowing the planning agent. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Merrick.
Thank you, Chairman. In relation to item 7, I declare a non-pecuniary interest by virtue of being acquainted with the agent. And in relation to item 9, this property is within my ward, and I have had some limited discussions concerning this development, but only in relation to access, so it does not affect this particular application.
Thank you. Councillor FD.
Thank you, Chairman. Non-pecuniary interest with the applicant's agent.
Thank you. Councillor Belton.
Thank you. Non-pecuniary in the virtue of knowing the agent. Thank you.
Thank you. It's quite a complicated list. Can I just check that Mr. Irwin's content with everything that has got all the details?
Yes, Chair, thank you.
Thank you very much. So that takes us, as we mentioned, our item 6. This item's been deferred for a future meeting of the committee. So we are now on to item 7, which is land to the west of Cherry Orchard, Jubilee Country Park. I've forgotten who's taking this one. Is it Mr. Stranks? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is on a site on part of the Cherry Orchard Country Park west of the existing car park and access. If you can cursor the new access off the roundabout, please, Katie, and show the location of the car park. That's the roundabout, so we go, that's fine, thank you. And then obviously our site has edged, which shows us broadly H-shaped structure, which I'll explain. This application is in outline form with all matters reserved. That means that the usual matters we sometimes pick up about access perhaps or siting, they're not for consideration this night. It's just the principle of the development on the site before you. The applicant has put forward a concept of what such a visitor centre might include, but these details are indicative only, but just helped for an understanding of the application and to help members. If outline planning permission were granted, it would obviously be necessary for a detailed reserved matters application to come back before you at some stage, clearly setting out the favoured design and its impact for consideration. The scheme suggested would include a reception area and office space for management of the sites, educational space to one wing. If we can jump to the floor plans briefly, please, Katie. A display and retail space. I don't know if we'd be able to centralise that. I'm probably being faster and unkind to my help, but you'll see it's broadly a H-shaped plan, Chairman. To the right of your screen, I appreciate that the notation is upside down. There's no need to rotate it, Katie, but you'll see the area that's been suggested as would be a sort of an educational space, display areas, the opportunity to have groups on site and perhaps look at the ecology, things like this. The central area, the cross wing to the H, would be a broad reception area, and the sort of box behind that would be office for administration. To the left of the reception, that's right, there'd be public toilets. So there's a disabled toilet there, a male and female. And then on the far wing, you'll see that there's a facility for cafeteria with a kitchen behind. Now, this is not necessarily for decision tonight to agree that layout particularly. It's just an idea of what the applicant said a typical visitor centre may well look like. For members tonight, it's agreeing an outline permission, if that's your gift, to then come back in detail at a later stage. The applicant has also given us a 3D visual, which we just have a brief look at. And you'll see from the report that this would be suggested to be timber designed and timber framed. And you'll note on the roof there, the sedum planting, eco-friendly roof. And this suggestion, it doesn't necessarily mean that if approved, this is what it would look like. But this is particularly low rise and low key, which, you know, something like this would have minimal impact on the green belt. If we can go back to the location plan, please. Members will understand that the site is in the green belt. It's also within the Upper Roach Valley designation in the council's adopted local plan for landscape purposes. Whilst most buildings would be inappropriate in the green belt, national policy does allow for appropriate facilities for outdoor recreation. And where the harm to green belt is outweighed by the public benefit and the openness of the area is essentially preserved. So this application that would be a relatively small building in the context of the size of the country park itself. It's only a small part of the country park which is proposed to relate to this application. The benefits, obviously, with refreshments and comfort facilities, they would outweigh, in officers' view, the harm to the green belt. The access and car parking areas are already established. As the size proposed is indicative only, we would not be able to ascertain at this outline stage whether additional car parking is required. But if the application is approved and pursues to detailed reserve matters at some stage, that would be an opportunity to revisit once we understand the full floor space. The proposal would accord with policy CLT5 of the council's adopted core strategy for the opportunity for public conveniences in public open spaces, and with the display area inside the building, some possibility for public art. The preliminary ecological appraisal finds no conflict with the proposed site in likely to harm any protected species, and members will have seen that the council's arboriculturalist sees no issue with any trees on this part of the site where the proposal is proposed. Similarly, archaeological features are unlikely to be impacted, I believe, because the site was at one time a mineral extraction. The capacity of the local sewage treatment plant would be able to take the flows arising. On the addendum, members will have seen that a formal response of no objection in reply to the notification has been received from the council's Assistant Director for Assets and Commercial. The recommendation is therefore that the application be approved subject to the conditions set out in the report.
Thank you. Mr. Strange just mentioned the addendum there. It literally just does have one line on it. The response from, as mentioned, response from the District Council's Assistant Director, Assets and Commercial. It simply says the council has no observations or comments to make at this time. That is the entire content of the addendum, in case anyone hasn't seen it. I wonder if you would mind stop sharing your screen now, and I can see that. Can I just ask if our non-member wishes to visiting member wants to say anything at this point? Oh, okay, right. Councillor Steptoe, as representing ward councillor, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is quite an unusual application. We do occasionally have applications where it's on somebody else's property by a third party, but it's the first time I can recall where it is on our own property. And to be honest with you, one wonders why. And I think that's something that a lot of us will be wondering. With the application.
Okay, just for absolute clarity, it's a point you've made, but it's not a planning consideration in any form tonight. Thank you.
I accept that, Chairman. I do accept that. With regards to the application itself, if this is not delivered, and what I don't quite understand from a planning point of view is if the application is granted, but the applicant does not deliver, does the planning permission transfer back to the council as landowner?
Well, at this point, what we're determining is the principle of development on that site. The actual building itself would need to return to us for a further planning application. So I think your question, although I'll just ask officers to answer it, it's not, again, part of our decision. So can I just ask for Mr. Stranks, if you could just answer that question?
Yes, Chairman. The planning permission essentially runs with the land. So effectively, the applicant becomes particularly involved if the application was subject to a legal agreement, and they would therefore hold obligations to the consent, but without perhaps being in control of the land. But in this case, there's no legal agreement recommended to you. So effectively, the council's site would be given the benefit of a planning permission, but it runs with the land and it would be timed. So the outline would last for 3 years, and if no further submission was made for the necessary reserved matters, then the permission would lapse.
Thank you, Chairman. There was one other question I wanted to ask.
Okay.
When you look at the outline of the area that we're talking about, it is right adjacent to an area of the Cherry Orchard Park, which is fenced off and is non-intervention. There's no intervention. I do have a concern that it is that close to that as to what effect that may have on that particular aspect of the park itself. I would have preferred to see the area just cutting short of that non-intervention area, so there's no disturbance to the wildlife that is taken up habitation within that non-intervention area.
Okay, thank you. I've just got a couple of other members in a moment, just for myself and to help direct the discussion, lead the discussion. This is in Greenbelt, and I feel this particular proposed allocation of land is appropriate. I think in terms of additional things that we might like to say, perhaps by means of informative, in that the use of the land by any building should have a standard that is at least meets the safe by design standard. Mr. Stranks used the terms low rise and low key, and I very much endorse that terminology for any formal design when it comes to us. And then when any further design comes to us, the capacity of that building should have a matched capacity in the adjacent car parking, and consideration should also be given to coach access to the site, because a visitor centre might attract that, with obviously awareness of other parties that might like to bring larger vehicles onto the site in an unauthorised manner. Thank you. Councillor Eaves.
Thank you, Chair. I, like Councillor Steptoe, have severe reservations about this, and I understand what you're going to say there, Chairman, but I need to put it on record that I have reservations. Now, the one thing that I have, which is a concern about the actual application, is the position. The application is for it to be in a particular position in the park. The applicant has had no conversation with anyone, as far as I'm aware, at the council, no interaction with anyone who has connections with Friends of Cherry Orchard Park, and so has no understanding of the way the conversations have gone with regards to the future use of the actual park. So my concern is that if we actually agree that this is okay in the position that it is in, it is actually in the wrong position. This particular field that it is in the middle of is the only place in the Cherry Orchard Park various areas that there are, where an event could be held. To put a structure of this size right in the middle of that park could limit the kind of activities that we could do down there. It does strike me as though the applicant has, for whatever reason, done this, but has had no idea of the conversations that have gone on, and quite frankly, by bringing it to us now, has wasted the council's time, because we're going to have to go through this exercise again once the council have decided what they want. So at the moment, I cannot support this proposal, because I believe the actual application is in completely the wrong position in the park. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman. This has already been indicated, and I've seen the site. However, there is no other information given to us for the park itself and what we aim to do with it. And to put this structure in without any other information coming to us on what is happening in the whole of the area, I don't think that this is very helpful to us. And I would like to know a lot more about the area and what is happening, rather than construct something before we actually have the full details of the whole site. I don't know if that's possible or what's going on, because I don't feel that the structure, we don't even know what the structure is, apart from being low level and in a conservation area. So
you're quite right, Councillor Stanley. We don't know what the structure is. It's the principle of a structure.
Yes,
that we're,
it's the principle of
working
it,
out,
and I can't agree with just principles. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Williams, I should have brought you in a bit sooner as your ward covers this area. So if you'd like to go next, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I would fully support this. It's something that would benefit the community as a whole. I have absolutely no doubt that it would improve the park, and I think that the benefits would certainly outweigh any detrimental facts from this. And I appreciate this is purely in principle at the moment. I just wonder if I could ask Mr. Stranks, looking at the plan that we saw of the area, I believe that car park was prior to the enlargement. Can you confirm if that's the case or not? So this would probably put it into a little bit more scale. If it's, I'm sure that's the smaller, the previous.
I can't help you with that, Chairman. I'm not. I can recall the enlargement as it is if we were there on the ground, but I suspect the members are right. It may be a smaller plan, but I don't know either way. I apologise for that.
Can we just ask Mr. Houghton if he can offer some information there?
And so could you bring the plan back up on the screen for a second? I'll be able to recollect quite quickly. It prints into my mind the outline of that car park.
If it helps, Katie, we're looking for the location plan. Sorry, Chairman, speaking out of turn there.
It's all right. It's an important question. There we go. Mr. Houghton then.
That's the original car park. I mean, so the car park now runs almost the entire length of that. What almost up to the start of the red. If you can imagine that red pathway, so it's a bit hard to start. So yes, so there, so almost north to the existing car park. So that all that area there is now car park.
Okay.
So
thank you very much.
Gives you a better idea of scale.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hookway, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I ask Mr. Stranks whether it was not possible, or was there some kind of constraints on having the proposed building much closer to the car park itself? And is there a particular reason for limiting the area in regard to the red line? If it was a broader area, it might give an opportunity to have different ideas as to the location of the proposed building.
I'll take Councillor Gooding next in case she's got any questions that we can lump together. Councillor Gooding, please.
So if this is in principle, I'm now wondering, in principle, how much car parking space we would need to accommodate this area, and where we would also, in principle, place that.
Yeah. Mr. Stranks, do you want to come back and answer Councillor Hookway's question?
Yeah,
please?
thank you, Chairman. I don't know if Katie's able to show the location plan again, just to orientate members, but the questions for you tonight is the suitability of the area edged red. I was rather hoping for the location plan. Thank you. You're being asked for the agreement in principle of a visitor centre on that area edge red. We know the country park is a much larger place, but the scope of your permission, if you like, if you grant it, is limited to that area red expressed by the applicant. Now, if members find that they're unhappy with that particular location, something there on that part of the park, then they should be considering the unacceptability of it. If they say, well, it should be, I don't know, 500 yards to the north or something like that, it wouldn't be within the area edge red. It'd be on the country park, but it wouldn't be within the area edge red. That is an issue for members. Now, on the question of car parking, uses are normally established with a floor space that then translates to a car parking quantum. So many square meters of say, restaurant cafeteria area, that would equate to, I think, one car parking space every 5 square meters, something like that. Okay. Now, because this is all matters reserved, and whilst we have a building to help us in our minds of what it might, something that it might look like, we couldn't rely on this particular floor space because everything about the design and the detail is reserved for another day, should you agree the principle. So we can't ascertain. If we were to say to you that building requires X number of car parking spaces, that would be wrong, because we'll have done a calculation on a building that is only a suggestion. This is what I'm thinking of. It's not, we're not being asked to agree a floor space quantum and therefore know that the amount of car parking we would require. Now, some schemes, when you look at them, and we consult our colleagues at County on Highways, they might say that the existing car park enlarged would be able to accommodate the demand in addition for this. So it wouldn't always be the case that we might settle on extra car parking being required. But I take the point mentioned that, you know, if the education facility that's being suggested might require then school groups, etc., with coaches and larger vehicles and things like that, that of necessity would have to be dealt with at a reserved matters stage. Quite often developers say for flatted schemes and buildings we're more used to, they ask for the siting to be agreed, and that then naturally dictates a floor space, which then talks us into car parking. But this is expressly just, how about a visitor centre on the area edge red? What do you think about that? All the details we've seen. It's always a danger when we start getting floor spaces that are indicative and the appearance of buildings that are indicative. Whilst they help, if we start deciding whether that particular building has adequate car parking, it would be wrong on this occasion, because we're not being asked to agree that design until a further reserved matters stage, should that happen. I hope I've made that clear, Chairman.
Thank you. I'm going to move the recommendation and 11 points that are in the report, plus the informatives regarding safe by design, low rise, low key, and as Mr. Stranks has just mentioned, car park matching, car park capacity matching, and consideration for coaching for coaches. Is there anyone that would care to second me on that? Councillor Efty, thank you. So members, I think everyone has been able to follow the points. No one has had intermittent connection. Right, okay. So the recommendation is for approval with the 11 points as listed in the report, plus the informatives as mentioned. Can I ask if anyone would like a recorded vote? Please raise your hand. That is the case. 3. I believe the threshold is reached. So I'm going to ask Sonia to take us through a recorded vote, please. If that's all right. It is you going to do it, Sonia.
No problem. Councillor Mrs. Butcher, would you like to vote for, against, or abstain, please?
Yes, thank you. I will be voting for.
Councillor Mrs. Belton.
For, please.
Councillor Efty.
For, please.
Councillor Eaves.
Against. It's in totally the wrong position. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs. Gooding.
For, thank you.
Councillor Hookway.
I'm against the location, but for the principle.
Can I just ask for absolute clarity there? The motion.
I'm against the motion as is presented.
Thank you.
Councillor Merrick.
For.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Stanley.
Against.
Councillor Steptoe.
For.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you. For.
Chairman, that's 8 for and 3 against.
Thank you, members. That item is approved. Thank you. We next move on to item number 8, land to the north of London Road and west of Raworth Industrial Estate, Raworth Lane, Rayleigh.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just going to share my screen. Chairman, this application seeks reserved matters consent relating to scale, layout, appearance, landscaping and access in relation to part of the strategic landscaping at the Wolsey Park development site. The location plan on screen and edged red is the whole of the Wolsey Park site, which outline planning permission for largely residential development of up to 500 homes was approved in 2016. The approved parameter plan relating to the outline consent, sorry. Hopefully that will disappear. Okay. The approved parameter plan relating to the outline consent is now on the screen. This plan identifies areas of the site for residential development and identifies an area of strategic open space to the western boundary, indicated just by my cursor here. This extends from Rawth Lane to the north to London Road to the south. Specific details relating to the northernmost section of this western area. So the plan on screen has Rawth Lane indicated by my cursor here towards the top of the screen. So specific details relating to this northern section have already been granted reserve matters consent in 2017. The approved details are shown on the screen and include areas for tree planting, as well as different areas for different grass mix planting. Throughout the area, some 2 metre wide hard surface paths were approved, providing pedestrian only access routes through the space, as well as additional paths that weren't hard surface but were formed of mown grass. The aerial image of the site as a whole is now on the screen. And whilst a little out of date, because actually we've got far more development now, so far more construction having taken place in this phase 1, indicated by my cursor here, towards the north. So it's a bit out of date, but you can still see across, down the western side, this is where this strategic open space is going to be developed. There we go. Just zoom out a little bit. Up. So the application now before members tonight seeks approval of the details of the southernmost section of open space towards the western boundary. This area would link in this point here indicated by my cursor to the already approved section to the north. The features and character of the open space proposed in the southern section would mimic those already agreed to the north. The space would feature a mix of different grassed areas, including areas of mown lawn. So if I just zoom in a bit, hopefully you can see the different shades of green. So this lightest area of green indicated by my cursor here and here, just north of this path, would be closely mown lawn with wildflower plugs planted within. And significant tree planting is also proposed around this area. Meadow grass, so areas where the grass would be allowed to grow longer, are shown in the darker green and will provide a different character to parts of the site. Other different grass seed mixes would feature in other areas to add variety and interest to the planting. Again, a different planting mix is proposed around the attenuation basins. They're shown in the blue colour on the plan on screen. And the species here would be suitable to the wetland environment. 2 metre wide self-binding gravel paths are proposed, similar to those ones to the north, and they're indicated in the beige colour. You can just see winding through this section east-west, indicated by my cursor, and then going southwards, joining to the northern section here. Again, as was agreed in relation to the northern section, and indicated on the plan on screen by the blue, hopefully you can see these blue dashed lines around the southern section of this attenuation basin, and then through this part here would be mown footpaths that would weave through the grass. 3 dog waste bins and 2 benches are also proposed. So the dog waste bins are indicated by the purple dots. Maybe you can see me indicating with the cursor on the screen, approximately centre of the screen there. And then we've got 2 benches proposed, one just north of this attenuation basin here, and then one just towards the northern boundary here. A post and wire fence 1.2 metres in height is proposed along the western boundary. So this is along this line here. Hopefully you can see that by my cursor. And then if I just scroll down again to the bottom, the only other boundary fencing treatment that is proposed on this plan is towards the southern boundary with London Road. And this again would be 1.2 metres in height, but would be a timber post and rail fence. And it would go along the sort of southern boundary, and it's indicated by a blue line with blue crosses. And it would extend just up part of the vehicle access off London Road. This would have a kissing gate, and that's shown indicated in this insert, indicated by my cursor here, to provide access through for pedestrians and from London Road. There is an existing bridge over the Rawrath Brook. Just in this position, hopefully you can see that by my cursor on screen here. And this will be provided with a railing, so that's indicated. I could zoom in just slightly more. It's indicated by this black dashed line here. Specific details of the species of tree and other planting will be required to be provided in relation to the landscaping planning condition, which was imposed on the outline planning consent, and those details will be submitted prior to any planting or works in relation to the landscaping taking place. The proposed landscaping of the southern section of the open space follows that agreed in relation to the remainder of the space to the north, and the recommendation therefore is one of approval as set out in the officer report.
Thank you. Just ask our visiting member, do you wish to say anything? No, thank you. Right, members, I'm just not seeing any hands indicating at this moment in time. I think for me, the key thing was that as Katie explained, that there was continuity in style, mimicking what has already been approved in the top part of the site. Councillor Stanley, you are the ward member and you've indicated. Would you like to speak, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Could I ask Katie, the kissing gate, is this one that the disabled could use if they're in a disabled mobile vehicle? As I know from looking at mobility throughout pastures or walkways across fields and what have you, it is now not exactly quite a kissing gate. It's more of a gate that they can actually open from their mobile unit. So can you elaborate on that? And also the I know it sounds really terrible, but do you think we could have more dog bins, if you like, closer to the ponds area where people sit and that sort of thing? Not right on top, but just away from there, because they seem to be that far apart. There doesn't seem to be, and we know for a fact that with the Swain Park, they are quite used and overloaded at times. And Marcus Houghton will actually vouch for that, because he's often cleaning them out. We might laugh about it, but it's a fact. People do take their dogs, and we need to make sure that the area is almost pristine, if you like. Could you elaborate on those, please?
If I just take the other members and we'll group the questions. Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Chairman. Two questions. I'm not sure if one will be relevant. The first question is, you mentioned there about railings where it goes over the stream. Will there be railings around the attenuation areas? Because they could be deep water, and will necessarily lifeguard equipment be supplied as part of that? On the subject of the dog bins, will the maintenance of the dog bins, shall we say, will that be part of the service charge that the residents will be paying, or will that fall over to the council to deal with?
Councillor Eaves.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question. When we're looking at the southern part of the entrance, where you've got the kissing gate, I note that the path there is an informal path. As we're looking at that as a definite entrance into the Greenfield area, I'm wondering if it's actually relevant to have it as an informal path, because during the winter periods, that's going to become extremely muddy.
Okay, right, that's all the questions. So if you'd like to sum things up, and then we'll determine this one, please.
Okay, thank you. I'll just share my screen again. So maybe let's take those in in order. So in relation to the kissing gate, I just zoom into this bit at the bottom. So in this insert, the sort of, obviously we haven't got an elevation plan showing what the fencing would look like, but this is an sort of a plan view of the kissing gate. It's at a scale, but I don't have the ability on this PDF to scale from this right now, to advise Councillor Stanley precisely about the disabled, whether disabled access would be possible. But what I would suggest is it would be appropriate to put an informative on, because what we're going to get, if this is approved, this reserve matters is approved, is more detail coming through in relation to that condition on the outline. So we can certainly make it clear to the developer that what we expect in relation to the discharge of condition is the ability for buggies perhaps, or for them to look at that issue and propose a design that's going to work. In relation to this same issue, though, Councillor Eaves, I think it was, that mentioned that this is going to serve a mown path, and that is right. This is towards the western side of the western bound of the southern boundary. So the majority of the built sort of urban part of Rayleigh is to the east. So potentially most people are coming up and would use the footpaths and access the open space, maybe from a different point crossing over the road. It could be that some people do, and I think if members again wanted sections of this to be hard surfaced, I don't think there's any reason why again we couldn't put an informative on, so that as part of the discharge of condition we maybe get a different surface treatment here. This is one way in, but there are, if I just zoom out just to give you the overall perspective, there is going to be a footway along the Spine Road here, but yes, this mown path is the only sort of path through this part of the public open space proposed at the southern extent, because the actual bound path starts at this point here. Can you see my cursor here? So this beige path weaves then to the north, and then you've got two arms of that bound gravel path going over to the east. In relation to the dog bins, if I just make it clear that we've got one dog waste bin proposed in this location here, so at this point in the Y of the paths. Then there's one proposed just outside the redlined area here, but the applicant has made clear that they do propose one that's just slightly within the residential envelope here. There's another one proposed at this point here, but in relation to Councillor Stanley's, I think, specific point about the dog waste bins being very close to the ponds where people might, I suppose, sit and linger, there is a bench proposed here. We could again add that as an informative. There's no reason why the dog waste bins, I don't think, have to specifically be in those locations. If we want an informative to suggest that maybe they're closer to where the ponds are, people may linger and sit for longer. There's also one proposed right to the south, again, right next to this kissing gate. The dog waste bins will be managed by a management company, so it won't fall to the local authority. It will be the management company, and I do anticipate then that these bins will be emptied on a regular basis. Any residents living on that site and noticing a problem will have a ready phone number to call if there are problems, and that's a service they're going to be contributing to. So in number there are 4 proposed. If members don't think that's sufficient, potentially we could put an informative on. There is a condition proposed on the application to deliver that, so if members felt strongly that more were needed, maybe we could alter that condition, but I think there is some hopefully quite strong guarantee that these will be emptied regularly. The other question I think Councillor Steptoe had was with regard to railings around the attenuation ponds. None are proposed as part of this specific reserve matters application. That doesn't prohibit the developer putting in proposed details of any fencing or sort of boundary treatment to these attenuation areas as part of the discharge of condition relating to the landscaping. In relation to the area to the north, so we've already as a council agreed reserve matters in relation to this area to the north and the details of the condition, and we haven't specifically required any fencing of this attenuation pond 1, so this larger one. Clearly there is, let me just go back to the plan that's for approval tonight. The brook runs through the site, and it's certainly not proposed to fence that in any way. What's proposed in relation to the brook, which obviously carries water at certain times deeper than other times of the year and heavy rainfall events, there is existing sort of planting around the margins of the brook which would be untouched, and then it would be supplemented as you get further away with new planting. So it sort of acts as a natural buffer for people to, you know, steer clear of that area. These attenuation basins will be designed to hold some water, and then at times of heavy rainfall events will fill to a higher level, but the actual profile of these has a wide margin around the edge. If I can zoom in, I don't know how much I can, let me just, I don't know if you can see this on the screen. This one's probably most obvious if you can see my cursor here. So there's a bound gravel footpath that is the designated footway, which will appear very obvious to pedestrians. And then alongside that, there is a 3 metre wide sort of access around, that should be mown grass, but it provides another sort of access around there that's a really low incline, if at all visible as an incline at all, and then it very gradually sort of steps down. Will carry some water. At the moment there is no proposed fencing as shown on the reserve matters application to these attenuation ponds, and there wasn't in relation to the ponds in the area to the north. And also that there is no specific details of any life sort of buoy equipment at the moment proposed. And I think that answers all the questions. Whether there's any further questions, I'm happy to, I'll stop sharing. See.
Okay, thank you. I can't, Councillor Hookway.
Thank you, Chairman. On the basis of what Katie's just said, I'd like to suggest an informative in relation to the Kissing Gate and the path from the Kissing Gate, that we would look to have a hard surface area from the southern boundary from the Kissing Gate for approximately 100 metres to try to prevent the potential for the area to become bogged down in mud in the winter seasons. And I'd also suggest an informative to add an additional dog waste bin in the vicinity of the proposed bench near the one of the attenuation basins.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Stanley, do you wish to come back?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I would agree, second that with Councillor Hookway, to have these looked into and to see what we can do in ways of making that a cinder and not just cut grass. As we know from the entrance to Swain Park, it just became muddy as just a quagmire basically, and it wasn't drained out. So I would ask if we could find out if it will be higher than the land surrounding, or whether there is some sort of dispersal of water in that area, because that is quite a low area, as you very well know. It does flood on that part between Swallows and the petrol station, and we've had flooding all the way up to Carpenter's Arms. So yes, that is quite low, and I would like that some sort of informative as to what's going on, what we can do with that. Thank you.
Yeah, obviously there's a variety of engineering solutions. So members, there is a recommendation for approval, which I'll move. There's 4 points, 1 to 4, plus the informatives around the detail of the access gate, which was described as the kissing gate, an additional dog bin, and then the making firm of the of what is currently described as the mown route, so that the winter period, the muddying up of the clay that we know we've got in this area is dealt with. Would someone like to second that one?
I'll second that, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Right, members, I think we can go to the vote now. I could just confirm that everyone has heard all of the discussion and evidence and is now in an informed position to make a vote. No one's got an equipment breakdown that needs to vote by another method. No, that's good. Okay, can I ask you to raise your hand if you require a recorded vote? No, there isn't one. Right, we'll do the voting by the click of hands. So those members in favour of the approval as listed, plus the informatives, please raise a hand now. That's 11. Thank you. If you could drop the hands. I think we've got 11. That was everyone, wasn't it? Yeah, that's unanimous. So no need to take a vote against. Right, thank you very much on that one. That item is approved. Item 9, site of Bournewood Hall Lane, Hockley.
Thank you, Chair. This application is the site of the former Bournewood Hall, as we just mentioned, the prison that was correct. One small error on the description. You'll see
Can
under
I just
where it
ask you
says
to
from
start again,
condition
Mr.
5
Stranks?
stated.
You broke up there significantly.
Yep. My apologies. Before we start, the existing condition on page 9.1 under from condition 5 stating, the line reads the first floor windows to house types. It should be the first floor side windows to house types, and that will become clear as we proceed. But to recover that, the application is to site the former Bournewood Hall, which you'll see there on the location plan, that's got a planning permission being redeveloped for 72 houses. Now, that permission was subject to a standard condition that we use, condition number 5 on that permission, that's set out in the report, which required the first floor side windows to a number of the designs to be obscure glazed and fixed shut below a height of 1.7 metres above first floor finished floor level inside the building, basically to be at or below eye height obscure glaze to maintain privacy between occupiers. The site is at an advanced stage of construction, and if we can jump to 002, please. Following inquiries made by the council's enforcement officers in relation to complaints made by existing residents, members will recall there is a group of housing that I think was formerly associated with the staff of the prison facility, and it became clear that the applicant had departed from this condition. There was a number of windows installed. The site is in an advanced stage of construction. I'm not sure that all houses are currently up to roof level, but enough of them to be able to be surveyed in the process of this application. But it became clear that not all the windows were fixed shut as we required, and it may well be that some of them hadn't got obscure glazing in. So the applicant has now made this application to vary condition 5 on the basis that he felt that a blanket approach was probably not necessary. And you'll see, it's difficult to explain, but there's a number of windows that the applicant is saying are okay. And this gives you a spread of the green walling that's been indicated here is gables with only obscure glazed windows. And then the pink is gable with some clear and first floor windows. So there's an overlooking issue that needs to be addressed, which the applicant now recognises. Now, to compound matters, when you seek to single issue a condition and address that, we are obliged as local planning authority to actually review and reissue the revised decision notice. It becomes complicated because the number of conditions that we're required to start with fall away, and that leaves those that are just necessary still now or for the continuity of the development. So although we're talking about a single issue, officers have to present you with a revised decision notice, which is hence the number of conditions in the recommendation that reflect the discharge of the conditions on the journey of the development. Hopefully that's clear. If we can jump to plan 3, please. The applicants have proposed a condition that in respect of the obscure glazing of upper floors on the windows that officers cannot accept. Now, that's saying that the applicant has presented an alternative condition 5 that was, but we can't accept that as presented. Officers have looked at every plot under construction and found that a variation between what was originally proposed or recommended as condition 5 and the applicant's alternative could be acceptable. You'll see that some windows to specified plots must be, in officers' view, this is condition, what is now condition 3, as a result of the sort of casualty of having to rejig the decision notice. So condition 5 would become condition 3. You'll see that some of those plots must, in officers' view, still be obscure glazed and fixed shut below 1.7 metres finished floor level as the condition required. But others may have a restrictive hinge. If we can see plan 4, that the applicant has provided a design of a hinge that can be introduced to the existing windows that give a restriction of 13 degrees. That's plan 004 if you're hunting for that, Katie. To just see, members, it's an exploded view. It will fill the screen, but it will show you, there you go. It will show that there's a restrictor on that design that just allows it to be ajar, limiting views outside that open window. So officers are saying on specified plots, which is set out in condition 3, that this design can be adopted, and then the balance of the windows can be clear. So the recommendation, Chairman, is therefore that the application be approved subject to this new consent being written into the legal agreement on the previous consent and to the new conditions that are set out in the report.
Thank you. If we could just lose the screen share, please. Right. Thank you. Councillor Sperring, would you like to speak on this one? You're just on mute at the moment.
I fully appreciate the developers have only concentrated on the windows, but in their pages of other issues, on page 9.4, they talk about construction traffic control and delivery of construction materials and plant. which I find rather ironic, because the biggest problem, they're addressing it now because they want something done for their windows. But the simple reality is this is a major problem that they've failed to address since 2017. It is a continual problem, and I would like to think that something could be done to draw this to a developer's attention, because nobody else seems to want to take on this issue. And we've already had residents losing fences down there. It's not acceptable what they are proposing, and this is just another area where they've got things wrong. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Stanley, please.
Chairman, could I ask Mike Stranks, is the window to open with its hinge at the top, or is it opening with the hinge on the left or the right hand side? The reason that I ask this is that the field of view, if it is hinged either left or right, is still wide. You can still view across, whereas if the hinge is at the top, the view would not be quite so. You'd have to get on your hands and knees to open the window to get the view. So it is, if it's just for, is the idea of the window for ventilation, which I imagine it would be. So there is what is the makeup of the window frame and how it's held of the window?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Eaves.
Thank you, Chair. By nature of my business, I'm very aware of these kind of defender limiter hinges. They are very easy to swap out. What is to prevent a future occupier from just swapping them out so as they fully open? Thank you, Chair.
Nothing is on that, but it wouldn't comply with planning consent. Councillor Hookway.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I ask Mr. Stranks as to whether the developer was fully aware of condition 5 when construction started, or so have they ignored it, or have they sort of like were unaware of it during the course of their construction? It seems that you know, when we put these conditions, we are expecting them to fulfil them. So what was their reasoning for not complying with it? I know they're looking to alter it now, but I just wondered if Mr. Stranks has got any additional information in relation to that. Thank you.
When we do sum up the questions, I'll only ask Mr. Stranks to answer that one if he has had an answer from the developer. I wouldn't ask him to speculate on that one, because I don't think that would be fair. Councillor Gooding.
I share Councillor Eaves' concerns regarding the restrictor, because I've obviously experienced in those myself. So I know that they are easily removed, and I would really share my concerns about that. It's not going to work, not on the long term.
Thank you. Would you like to gather those questions together, Mr. Stranks, please?
Thank you, Chairman. As you say, I could only speculate a lot, and I'll leave it there on the awareness of the developer. I don't know if Katie can show us 004, which I think is the hinge detail. My understanding is that it would be on the bottom. We're looking here at an aerial view from above through the sort of light bulb lines are the insulation, and the cross-hatched to the top is the section through the wall, and then the 45-degree lines are the inner wall. So you'll see that the window is recessed into the walling above the insulation, as it were, on a sill. And I stand to be corrected by anybody more familiar with the construction, but I would say that's a bottom hinge fixed in the window. So it would open, as you see from the sort of pink shading, to an acute angle. That's the point. It will give some limited view rather than being able to open the full window. And I take your point, Chairman, that if that was removed, then we would have the ability to enforced. This is actually what's brought the application forward. The public have complained, the enforcement team have investigated, and the applicant has, as is his right, brought forward an alternative proposal for us to consider. So the enforcement has worked. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Just wait for the share screen to go.
Chairman, whilst that's us.
There we go. Yeah, Councillor Steptoe.
I was just going to say, the officer there mentioned about the window there. I wasn't clear from the photo, the picture, the drawing there. Does the window open inwards or outwards?
That was outwards. That was outwards opening on the diagram we saw.
I thought the officer was saying that was inwards.
Just want to say inwards or outwards, Mr. Stranks?
Outwards, Chair.
Right, thank you. Councillor Belton.
Thank you. My experience with the hinge restrictions is that they can be easily undone. Essentially, you with a very quick flick of a switch, you can undo it, and I think that might be because of for health and safety, a fire risk situation. But ultimately, it almost deems the hinge pointless. So I just would ask: is it fixed in situ so that it cannot be adjusted, or is it one that can easily be adjusted with a flick? In which case, is it sufficient? Thank you.
Members, we've heard a number of different points. Councillor Stanley, do you want to come back and suggest a way forward?
Yes, please, if you don't mind. From what I understand then is the hinge is at the bottom so that you can look out from the top, which is no. Am I wrong?
It's on the hinge is on the side. The window opens, but only a small amount to 13 degrees.
And opens outwards.
Yes.
Right. So what I'm proposing then is exactly the opposite, to open inwards.
Right. That would a window opening inwards rather than outwards. I believe that would be a fundamental difference in the planning application. And so it wouldn't be appropriate for us to change something from opening out to opening in. I don't think that would be appropriate.
Well, they are changing. They are changing they are going against what we've asked them to, and they're changing the window completely.
Yeah, so they've applied to open the window outwards in some cases.
Can we make a condition then that the window should open inwards?
That is diametrically opposite to what is applied for. So I believe an application would a fresh application would need to come in on that case. Would you like to just confirm my viewpoint on that, Mr. Stranks?
I can, Chairman. Yes, it's a specific detail. If members are unhappy with this arrangement, then they would be looking to find the proposal unacceptable. It would need a substitution of design, to my understanding.
Yeah. Right, okay. Councillor FD, you have indicated now.
Thank you, Chairman. Could the window not open outwards, but from the top, so it opens outwards, so the only gap will be at the bottom. You still get air vent in, and you won't have no side view, and all you'd be able to see is the grass.
It could open in lots of ways, but the application before us this evening
is that way.
Is to open sideways. So bottom line is, if you don't feel in the locations indicated that it is acceptable, then you won't agree with this application.
Okay, thank you, Chairman.
So having heard the conversation, the discussion, is there a member that wants to take this forward in any other direction before I take an action as the chair? Councillor Hookway.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to put forward a proposal for refusal.
Okay. Could you state your reasons for refusal, please?
because I feel that the solution that is being offered by the developers does not meet with our council's policy and requirements, and the possibility that it could be easily undermined with the limitation of the hinging.
Thank you. Can I ask if there is any member who wishes to second Councillor Hookway?
I'll second that, Chairman, please. Thank you.
Seconded by Councillor Stanley. Okay, members, we have a motion for refusal put forward by Councillor Hookway about the non-compliance with the council's requirement and the lack of robustness and integrity of the proposed solution. Can I just confirm that all members have heard the discussion? You're in a properly informed position to make a decision on this one, and everyone's got their IT working and not going to be restricted in letting us know what's going on. Just looking around the screen, that's all good. I'll first of all ask if any member wishes to have a recorded vote. Please raise your hand icon if necessary. No one has. Right. Can I ask you to raise your hand if you are in favour of the motion to refuse this? I'm counting 11. And if 11 is the case, that makes that unanimous. Thank you. You can drop your hands. That item is refused. There is no item 10. So at 20:47, I'll say thank you everybody for your support as chairman of this committee, and it is for this new municipal year where I say thank you and good night.
Good night, Chairman. Thank you.